We'll convene the Land Use Committee meeting to order November 4th, 1 o'clock in DCD. I'm Scott Diener. We'll go around the table.
Sean Chardy's here.
Fred Chang.
Nick Bond.
Mark Dorsey.
Carrie Sully.
Rob Patansu.
And we're going to add an agenda item number 7, which is Parks Plan. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very good.
And are there any changes to the agenda or the order of the agenda? Hearing none, we'll start with Mr. Dorsey and the McCormick Woods Trails.
Yeah, so we have a request from a hiker, a brown hiker. I'm not really sure.
Brian Hawkins.
Yeah, for the brown hiker crossing.
Oh, it's brown sign.
It's the brown sign. Never mind. Right, so this is problematic because this has really nothing to do with hiker signs. As much as we would like to think that it has to do with a hiker sign. A hiker sign is what you'd see like in a state park where you've got like no traffic and you would just have this trail and you'd have these hiker signs. The problem we have is if you go to the area, Nick, is it's 45 mile an hour.
Not anymore. Not anymore. It's 35.
It's 35. It really, we could put the hiker signs up there, but then the issue is really crossing the road, and that's what they're asking. Is about crossing the road.
Okay.
What needs to happen and we would, under our crosswalk policy guidelines, be able to identify a demand. That's probably one of the biggest issues. You got sight distance and speed. What we're really talking about here is a $30,000 mid-block crossing, the high intensity, rapid flashing, and are we going to install that? That's really what.
We have school zones that need those more than this site does.
This is the area by McCormick Village Park. The entrance to the park is here. There's this fire access road across the way, and they've got this little footpath that goes into the woods right here, and so people are using that to get over to McCormick Park. But it's pretty primitive in terms of a trail system, but apparently there's a bunch of trails out there that exist that we didn't know about until recently.
And they've shown it on this map. And it looks like this is an official McCormick Trail map.
Yep.
Right, and again, I'm not discounting the necessity for trails or the attractiveness of trails. This just isn't, the request isn't really what
it would be nice as we're negotiating once we get past this moratorium issue and start negotiating the development agreement, that transportation and the overall deal, that we know that these shoulder improvements and a crossing point needs to be happen, but I think it needs to be part of a bigger fix on this roadway.
Well, and does the trail need to be diverted, and does the crosswalk need to be at the main intersection of McCormick Woods?
Right. This is and so my point is, it seems pretty innocuous at this. Well, we just want a couple of brown signs, but it just starts this domino of we really need to have a crossing, and the crossing could be at the future roundabout or at the future improvements to the intersection of McCormick Woods Drive. We have to dictate really where that crossing should occur, and to just have a mid-block crosswalk is problematic. As you know, most jurisdictions are systematically just getting rid of any mid-block crosswalk because of the liability. And so, my sense is if they want to put a little brown hiker sign on either side, but I don't think the city is able to actually install ourselves. They built the trail without any permit from the city. I would hesitate.
My concern when you put a sign, it's going to give a pedestrian a false sense of security there.
Yeah, then we would have an acknowledged liability.
Right.
Not the same as a crosswalk. The crosswalk I could see could give more of a liability in the sense of a false sense of security.
Crosswalks give a more, you have a higher incident of fatalities and injuries actually in marked crosswalks than out. because they create a false sense of
It's been
security.
a while. I've been on all of these trails before, right? And they're very, very well maintained. But I think the trail that you're alluding to down here, I'm not so
Where does
sure
it
that that's
start?
part of a maintained trail. So maybe in a phone call out to the HOA
Yeah, maybe
who
they
manage
should
those,
come on.
because maybe that shouldn't be there, right? To give people the false sense of that
This
there's
is this one they're
continued-
calling the Cascara Spur.
Spur.
Yeah, just this little tiny. Like I said, it's been a while since I've been over there, but that gets pretty rogue in there, and it's not like
Looks
the other
like
maintained
somebody's
trails.
just put
Yeah.
it in here.
Somebody
I mean, the-
pushed it through because they want to get to McCormick,
Right.
but again, it's just
But that might be a way for the homeowners association to maybe block that off, where it's not intended to be, because all of their trails are probably 6 feet wide and mulched. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really that's not
There
what
is a
the trail
post there
system
for
looks
some
like.
reason.
So,
but-
and they speak to that trail crossing in that last paragraph here on the trail map.
To Fred's point, though, too, is there any harm of making people aware that there's pedestrians in this area? And not
It's
necessarily
like
a
a deer
hiker sign, but
crossing. A deer crossing sign. What's the harm in that?
And
Well, that's probably up there.
Put another deer crossing sign there.
I mean, to me, it's pretty black and white. We either do nothing, or we actually do a
The whole
high
thing.
intensity rapid flashing crossing. We don't really have in between, in my opinion. We either have to mark it or not mark it.
Well, if you look at the map, though, it is right across from the village park, so you could see that there would be an appeal to walk just across the street at that point.
Well, right, because this trail, if you walk up that trail, that now connects into the park through that road trail that got brought in from McCormick Ridge Division 3. That's just by the dog park. So,
I think that trail was
So-
always there, though. That was
It
always
was- well, it wasn't. This paved trail was always there. There was, and when we did the phase 1 with the logging, there was an old trail there. What wasn't there was an opening in the fence.
Well, and again, I think what you guys alluded to, have this being part of a bigger solution, spot on, because I don't know that the developer, I've never asked him the question, but in the past, these aren't advertised as public trails. These are private trails. And so do they really want, you know what I mean?
Well, the ridge isn't a part of McCormick either.
Right. So I think it's part of a bigger conversation. That, hey, you
Putting
bring
up
up
a
a great
fence.
point.
A barbed
You know,
wire fence.
and
if
this is
you're down
probably
in
what it's going to
McCormick,
look
you
like
can't
when it needs
cross.
to be part of a larger. I think that's a good response,
I think so too.
and to figure out all these players involved, because
I know the
may not
rider.
want-
He actually rides his bike from downtown up to McCormick 3, which is quite a haul. And he is not in any concern for his own safety because
Brian?
he rides his Brian. Yeah.
Brian's on the bike right now.
Yeah, he does. He works at the shipyard.
Brian Hawkins is a retired NASA guy.
Well, there is another Brian Hawkins who lives in
Okay.
McCormick 3 who rides his bike from.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, so I mean,
One
this-
thing, Mark, if they're into kind of maintaining their own trails, they might want to pull back that trail, some of the shrubbery on that trail opening, because it looks like, some of it's tall enough to hide a short kid. So that it has a little more visibility at the trail entrance.
Yeah, it says we've brushed out the spur. So,
So you're not just popping out onto the road from a trail, essentially. That's maybe a side conversation to have with.
so you just want me to reply to him via email and just
We reviewed it with the land use committee, and that
We'll look at it
We-
as part of a comprehensive solution.
solution to as we work through a development agreement, a master agreement with the
Yeah, and
developer.
then maybe let them know too that has the new signs gone in there on Oak Clifton yet? I've not seen them.
yeah, the
Yeah,
parking signs.
just recently.
No, the speed limit sign. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the speed limit and the no parking.
Because I saw them on
sign.
Sydney. I don't know that I've seen them on Oak Clifton yet.
Yeah, it's Martin. gets
Anyway, you
some
might let
detail.
them know that, as part of
If-
this,
if it
we're
hasn't happened,
already.
it's happening.
That's what I mean. Let them know that this is
Yeah.
a big part of.
Yeah, this larger.
Yeah, but this will
Okay.
help.
Okay, I'll reply.
So let them know, because that's kind of a, that
Now cars only do 50 instead of 60.
Well, obviously the improvements on the corridor once the roundabout is at Figley and the roundabout at Anderson and the improvements at McCormick Entry and we don't know what those look like yet. So
Yep.
okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 2, comp plan updates.
All right, so in your packet and for consideration at the council meeting on, the 11th is our next meeting, I believe. the 12th, is we revised the land use element from the previous meeting. We had a number of items that Councilmember Diener and Councilmember Ashby pointed out. We also found a few other typos. So the red line version that's here today is just kind of one last opportunity to take a glance at things. We did fix the centers map. We had previously said that there are 10 centers, and there's actually 11. That Salmonberry, it's called South Bethel on the map, center was left off, and so that was added to the list at the beginning of the chapter. But all in all, it remains mostly unchanged from the previous meeting. We just had a couple of other description errors that were pointed out. I think the South Kitsap School District had been in the Bethel Mile Hill Center, the lower Mile Hill Center, and that had been taken out, so we had to fix that description of that center. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this more closely prior to today, or if you...
I did. I didn't. Nothing. It seemed like you caught at least some of the comments that I had
These
mentioned.
colors right here.
One thing maybe that might
Sure
be...
looks like McCormick isn't that color.
This is McCormick.
Oh, thank you. And that's the industrial. That's why.
One thing that I think would be helpful is to have a page dedicated to each one of these areas so that you can see them a little more. And did
I
we
think
already mention this
that's
before?
the long-term goal.
Okay.
Once we actually write the plan for each center, this is really still high level, and we need to plan these areas, but they haven't been defined to that degree of specificity yet.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so like the Ruby Creek Center, or I think we still call it the Sidney Sedgwick Center here. We have started writing that chapter. We've got someone helping us with some graphics on that, and that one will be the first one that's probably ready for adoption as part of next year's comp plan amendments, and it'll have the map of the center as well as very specific policies and goals for that particular area.
But if somebody wants to see whether they're in the center or not, they might have a hard time with some of this based on this representation.
Sure.
I can do that. It's not hard for me to do this if you want.
To add the images, I'm just wondering if it's going to take up a lot of space in here. I mean, it's easy for us to pull the map or to print it larger. Do we actually need...
On a needs basis. Yeah. Are they going to our comp plan to figure that out? I think they're going to go to an online resources or a meeting with staff.
And I guess there's no benefit to being in the center in the absence of any policy associated with that center. So the likelihood that somebody needs to know whether they're in the center or not doesn't justify 5 or 10 pages of extra maps in the plan. But happy to do it if we want to do it.
Well, I'm just speaking for myself. I would like to, in any case, I'd like to, well, at some point, I'd like to have a close-up of these maps so that I can see where the boundaries are.
You might be able to do where you're not adding too much. It would be 3 pages if you did half a page per center, front and back. You know what I mean?
But could you add it as an inline graphic so
pretty
it's just
big.
next to the paragraph and it doesn't take the whole page?
That's
or
fine.
something?
If you guys would like to see that, we're happy to do it, and we can
Do it how?
inline. So we have a paragraph for each center, with the exception of downtown and the county campus, which has a little bit more to it. So just
Sort of the way that you integrate these graphics in with the text. Just
so like for each one of these paragraphs, like the Tremont or the Bethel Gun Center, just put a map
Yeah,
underneath.
it could
that
be like
shows
this
it.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then I can take the legend off because it will
And
be
just have that
connected
little
with
section.
the description.
Yeah.
And okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all right.
Well, I think we'll leave
Although
the
the
whole
legend,
map.
yeah, you know
nice.
the whole map, but then each one taken out, and then I can just have the blown up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, like and then we'll make
like
a puzzle.
That big.
And I can put the street stack on it,
but
which
you're,
will help too.
sorry, just I'm saying, you're saying leave this map.
Leave the
in
big
here.
map at the
Okay.
beginning,
All right.
and then
Yeah.
as each one has
Yeah.
the description.
Okay, we'll
yeah.
do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
And we'll probably we'll have a clean one on your dais tomorrow night that has the maps.
A week from tomorrow night.
Yes, thank you.
Any
That was
other
planning commission.
Yes.
any other discussion?
Great.
I would still say I like the name Sedgwick Sidney over Ruby Creek.
Oh,
It just sounds more descriptive of the location in terms of the geography I know. Because if someone
Yeah.
said Ruby Creek, I don't know where that is.
okay. Well, we can. I mean, we're not wedded to that. It's. I think the opportunity for Ruby Creek to become a central amenity within the neighborhood is going to make it more of a focal point or identifier in the future. It certainly isn't today. So.
You mentioned Planning Commission. Kathleen Wilson is asked to step down off the planning commission. She has too much on her plate. So.
Okay.
Joe Morrison is,
okay.
is who I'm bringing forward. He's an economic development guy for Anchorage, Alaska, lives here in the community.
So there's two sub-bullets to this discussion item on the agenda, and they're not related directly to the text that we're considering this week, but we introduced the idea of having a potential regional center for Port Orchard at the last council meeting, and that language is still in this chapter, is saying this could be a candidate for a future regional center. I wanted to let you know that we were successful in getting a grant from the Department of Commerce to do the downtown sub-area plan and planned action EIS. The mayor, I believe, is talking to some of our property owners, the port, the county, and other entities about contributing to this, because we think we can roll the county courthouse project, the Kitsap Bank Community Center project, and a couple of other things into the planned action EIS so that they won't have to go through a subsequent SEPA process as part of that planning effort. As it stands right now, we know we've gotten a grant. They have not even confirmed how much we got. They just said, congratulations, you're approved. I'm told that they had more than enough money, so we should be getting a full $50,000 from the state. As soon as we have an agreement, it'll go forward directly to council, because we're also going to start our consultant selection process as soon as possible. We've got an RFP drafted, and we want to make sure that Commerce is okay with us going out to ad and making sure we don't have any additional advertisement requirements for our selection. But we'd like to bring the grant contract and a consultant contract together at the same night so that we can hit the ground rolling, because this is it's a lot of work to do in a short period of time.
So we got 15 a grant, we've got 35 in the budget. We believe the scope of what we need to do is about 150. And so if we can get the county and a few others to even...
It could be less than 150, but I think if we want to do a really thorough job and include things like an economic market study or other components to help inform the decision making, I think 150 is going to get us a very complete plan. I think this could be done for 100 or even a little under 100 as kind of a bare bones type thing, but it's not going to be as useful.
So does this represent a large enough savings to like the Kitsap Bank project where they may want to throw a little bit in?
They're ahead of us. And whether or not we can catch up to benefit the county, Nick and I met with Eric Baker and Commissioner Garrido last week. They're interested, provided we're not slowing them down. It benefits them, but only if we can act fast enough.
Kitsap Bank you're talking about?
No, Kitsap County. We're not. No. We won't be fast enough for these guys down here.
No, I'm saying, is there any financial benefit to that project in the future by not having to do a SEPA that they may want to contribute a little bit on the front?
We don't think so, because they've done their master planning. Well, they haven't done the SEPA. I don't believe. I think our process will lag them. We're not sure about the county campus, whether we're fast enough to benefit them. So when we met with them county last week, they said we're interested, provided this happens fast enough to benefit our project. The Kitsap Bank component. No, the third phase of.
And the community center.
And the community center, possibly. But the first phase will happen ahead of us, should happen ahead of us.
How are you thinking
How are they describing the first phase?
It's the building, the parking structure, and the two towers, which is the housing and then the commercial office space. So I think it's 2 stories of parking and then 2 3-story structures and the public plaza, which is everything on the south side of the street, from Geiger to our property at Frederick. So, and then
including 640 Bay,
including that 640 Bay and the bank's parking lot. There's the next couple of buildings are smaller and on the water side, and it's after the bank gets moved across the street and their building goes away and their drive-through goes away, and the property that's been cleared right there was Jordan's. So and there's a couple of buildings there. It just depends on the future and the market and all kinds of factors that we don't know about. Now, Monsoor should be interested. The Titus property, West Bay, and 100 Bethel should be. So we've talked,
and maybe the Port of Bremerton,
and
Hopefully the Port of Bremerton.
I'm waiting on an election there. because the current commissioner won't be around. You know, so I'm just
Who owns the RV lot across from Cheers?
Les Schwab does. No.
Way back down there.
Cheers.
You mean across from Titus?
Titus?
No, down by Ross Creek almost. Between Swim Deck and the...
that's the port.
That's the port.
Yes, they
Oh,
own
so
the
up by
property.
Wilkins Place.
That was Larry Stokes' deal. He
Interesting.
thought that was a great investment
Yeah.
for the port.
Well, that spot could be good for condos.
It could be, but it's too far out right now.
Yeah. But it doesn't block any views.
Yeah. Well, whatever we can do to try and make sure that there aren't any major missteps between what the county's wanting to do up there and what we're doing down here.
Right.
Because
And another piece of this too, we want to look at parking. And
Yeah.
what I got from, if I understood Nick correctly, this could include the relocated parking, where those parking ride lots are, the SEPA for that. And so Transit's very interested in that, but I-976 guts their fund. John said, I'm interested, but I'm not talking about spending any
Right,
money
until
until after the election.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, exactly. Well, circle back. So I'm already making phone calls on this. Talk to Seago, they're interested. He's got a couple pans in the fire at the east end of town.
All right.
Okay.
So anyway, more to come on that. But once that process starts, it's going to move pretty quickly, and we will need volunteers for the selection committee. And so, if any of you, or I'll let the whole council know, but we'll probably need a council member to participate in that, as well as planning commissioner and some community members.
I'm interested in that.
Okay. All right. Carrie, you're next with the
All right,
shoreline.
item 3, SMP Public Participation Plan.
Okay, so we are just getting started on our mandated update to our Shoreline Master Program. We have a grant which we have accepted from the Department of Ecology, although we haven't actually applied for it yet. I'm about to do that hopefully next month. And what they require in order to accept and receive funding is we have to adopt by resolution a public participation program and work plan, which includes a timeline. So I've just prepared that, laid it out. It'll be going to the Planning Commission tomorrow, so they'll be coming forward with a recommendation to City Council to adopt our timeline, our goals, how we intend to reach out to the public and involve them in the process. The Planning Commission is designated as the initial review body. How we will keep the public informed through social media, advertising. We'll have a couple of open houses. All the groups we're going to reach out to, federal, state, and local groups, tribal agencies, and the work plan that we will be going through is based upon the gap analysis, which is in the back. We prepared this to show, here are all the areas that we believe our current SMP is lacking in, either because it's outdated, it doesn't reflect our current code, our comp plan has changed, state requirements have changed. So these are all the things that we need to do to bring our code and our SMP up to date. So we will be working with the county primarily in the next couple of months on their climate change resiliency study, because the one main thing that we're going to be doing here, I think, we don't need big updates to our SMP at this point unless council directs us otherwise. The one thing we want to do is look at downtown and potential hazards of sea level rise, and how that could affect our downtown planning, mitigation efforts, and new development in future. So the county is currently undertaking that on a large scale on a countywide basis. They reached out to all of the cities and said, hey, do you want to participate in this plan with us? If you want to contribute to the funding, we'll kind of do a little mini assessment just for you guys. And so Cascadia Consulting is who they're using. So Bremerton and Port Orchard are participating in that. We will get some more lower level information on that as part of that study. We should be expecting that in January. And so we will be incorporating that into this program. So this is just basically what we propose to do and how we propose to do it and the timeline. And so this will be coming forward to council at the end of November as a resolution.
I have a question on page 4 under technology and social media. The second point mentions it'll be on the city's Facebook page and a Port Orchard community Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Which page is that?
The one that I
big
see
one?
you on.
The big one? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know who's going to be posting that? Is it someone from the clerk's office?
Or you.
I was thinking it would be
do they
shared
mean-
from the city's page. So once
Yeah.
we create it on our page,
Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
shared.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
be shared. But is someone going, a
I think
designated
Janine
person?
shares on that page.
She doesn't.
She doesn't?
She does not.
Okay, well, I'm gonna
So-
at least see that if she can, because
Yeah.
it should go out
Yeah.
to a broader group instead
Yes.
of depending on people to come to our page. We want to
Yes.
go to theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be good. And do you know if they're getting another URL like we did for Tremont Street widening?
Another
Like
what did you say?
Another URL like we have for Tremont Street widening. This Atomic website address, it can direct to the city's page, but it's just something like Tremont Street widening. That's, of course, I don't know that this is as sexy as Tremont Street widening.
Well,
If we were doing a full rewrite, it might be.
Okay.
well, the climate resiliency component might
That
generate
could,
some
yeah,
interest there.
that could generate
That was
a
in the
lot of
paper
interest.
this weekend.
What kind of public participation occurred during the last update?
I wasn't here.
I wasn't here either.
Okay.
Oh. When was that?
That would have been 2013.
Oh, was it that?
Yeah.
That was 2011.
They should have, but they adopted it late.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
So this will be better.
of course it will.
So, any other comments? I had a couple comments. On page 2, I think on when you see the bulleted list, third bullet up from the bottom. maybe
Third
you
bullet
should-
from the bottom.
Third bullet up from the list of bullets. From the bottom. November,
Planning
December 2020, City Council review, public hearing and adoption.
Do you want to have a city council hearing as well as a planning commission hearing?
Well, I think so because after the Planning Commission's public hearing, then it goes to Ecology for their review. And so there may be some new information. that
We
comes
usually
up.
don't hold a public hearing if.
If there were
Commission-
changes, you could hold a public hearing. If there aren't changes, I would skip
Okay.
the public hearing. I think that's how our code reads concerning comp plan and development
Okay.
regulation amendments.
I can change it to hearing as needed and
Yeah.
adoption. Okay.
Yeah, optional, or council's option.
Okay.
And then on the, just a minor thing on the gap analysis, page 3. That top row is the same as the bottom of page 2.
Good. Oh, that's weird. Thank you. I will remove that.
And then same page 3, the next row, middle cell, where in the middle of that middle cell it says not yet adopted. I thought, and maybe I'm forgetting, I thought it was adopted.
Small cell
Yeah.
regulations? No. Nick?
We adopted the standards as part of the public works standards. We do not have a separate small cell ordinance providing for specific permits or permit processes.
Okay.
We just decided
Okay.
that they can seek a franchise and we have
Right.
adopted standards.
Okay. That was.
The federal government stepped in and muddied the water.
Yeah. Okay. Those are my only comments that I had.
Thank you.
Anything else on S&P update?
One little thing on the bottom of page 3 of public notification, it mentions the Independent, the city's webpage. Can you also include the city's Facebook page?
Let me get to where you are.
For public notification?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we tweet? Does anybody know?
Not yet, right?
We do not.
Okay.
Is the police department going to?
I don't think so.
Okay, we don't.
Okay.
Donald does, but we don't.
Donald who? Oh,
All right.
that's not a good example. It can be used positively. It can be used responsibly. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, item 4, significant trees and tree retention code. And before we get started, can I ask where you borrowed this information from? Or I presume borrowed?
So McCormick actually brought it to our attention. Snohomish County actually worked through the tree canopy standards, and
Okay.
they came up with an ordinance that really sought to maintain existing levels of tree canopy as new development occurred, rather than focusing so much on protecting individual trees.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's where it came from. And the percentages came from Snohomish County as well. But it was actually, they did a canopy. They had some GIS tools to estimate canopy coverage and determine that their single-family neighborhoods had about 30% coverage. We have not been able to do that same kind of analysis, but we're assuming it's similar and it could be tweaked if necessary.
Okay. Looks like there was a lot of thought put into it.
There was, and we just got actually a pretty long list of red line proposed changes from one of our planning commissioners today.
Oh.
And so the pot has thickened, and I don't know that we're going to get it done tomorrow night in its current form or
Stephanie?
even at all. No, Bernstein.
Really?
What was the difference between this document and this one? I know that they're not identical, even with the red lines accepted. Were they meant to be?
Oh, you're looking at the old tree canopy just dealt with the tree canopy. The one that you have combined significant trees and tree canopy.
Okay.
We originally had proposed to delete the significant tree code and just go with tree canopy. The planning commission did not like that approach at all. So we proposed a
Okay.
revised code that kind of took elements of both and put them into an entirely
Alright,
new
so
code.
this is just more of a background.
It's to let you know what was
Yeah.
where it first came from. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the original version prior to the planning commission reinserting significant trees was really user friendly and was going to work well in terms of our ability to administer it. It's certainly more complicated now, but I think the concern was that in some areas where you did have significant trees that you wanted to preserve or on existing lots, the new code really just sort of just took that off the table altogether. So we're trying to merge the two together.
This seems like one of those ordinances you won't know how well it works until you get it underway.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But
You have to pay attention to
what we learned, and I'll tell you and you'll eventually hear about this project, but there's a plat proposed out here at Geiger and Blueberry. The entire developable land area is trees right now, and when we realized that the old code said you have to replace trees at 3-to-1 when you take significant trees, and when you have
tree houses.
so you can't, I mean, you would need a ton of not forested land in order to put that many trees, more land than they already have. It really, and so we're letting them count their street trees as replacement trees, but they gotta find a place for like 300 trees off-site, and
How
that's
many
a lot of
acres?
trees.
How big?
I think this is like 50 or
Wow.
60 acres.
Well,
Yeah.
plus they have 100% tree canopy now.
Well, they did put out
Plus
a tornado,
Oh, okay.
but I think it's
It's
still
hard to
pretty
maintain.
pretty thick. So yeah, that's what we realized is that going 3-to-1, is the opposite of development. It's it's reclaiming land.
Big
for-
Bridge Island.
Yes. So and I think that when they wrote our original significant tree ordinance, they were thinking about big trees near downtown.
Right. When we wrote that, the city was 4,000 people, and it was just downtown.
It didn't include this area, actually.
So as soon as this gets through the planning commission, which could be later this month or it might not be until December or next year, you will see it again.
Okay.
All right, rezone.
Item 5, rezones.
I included the planning commission report. It hasn't gone to the planning commission yet, but I thought it made more sense than just dropping the maps in here with no explanation.
I didn't see an explanation for JWJs.
That's probably the most borderline one in terms of doing it as a citywide rezone because it. Well, I guess let me take a step back.
So do you want to just start the
Let's walk through
first?
them
Okay.
in order. So the Lundberg possible rezone, there is a property here at the corner of Harold and Lundberg. It has an existing single-family house on it, and they had a problem prior to adopting the new code, and they still have a problem in that as soon as I turn on the aerial photo, you can see they have a single-family house here off of Harold. Neither their previous or current zoning allows a single-family house as a conforming use. The owner of this house passed away, and the heirs are trying to sell it, and the people that have agreed to buy this can't get a loan because they can't rebuild it if it's destroyed. So the proposal here would be to take this from commercial mixed use to business professional mixed use, which does allow for single-family homes, and they're not proposing to do any development. It's just that they want to be conforming so that they can do their financing, and so that's one of two solutions. The other one would be to change our non-conforming statutes. And
Can you zoom out? Where is this?
See, I was going to say that begs the question of whether we ought to look at
That's
our
off the
non-conforming code. And
Oh, I know where that is. Okay.
yeah, I mean the challenge is
That's commercial?
if you make it a conforming, if you make it so that non-conforming structures or uses can be maintained or expanded citywide, you're less likely to see implementation of your zoning code because people are going to want to add value to what they've got rather than converting that use into something that is consistent with your plan. And so I think that this is a more difficult approach in terms of usability, but it's, we can consider things more on a case-by-case basis and say, yes, it makes sense to make this one a conforming use because it's unlikely to redevelop. In this case, the county is the one that owns the land adjacent to this that they bought for the Bethel widening project. There is a big wetland in the middle of this site, so it's kind of bisected from the commercial corridor. They could change it to R2 with a comp plan amendment, but going to BP2, which allows single-family houses, is a way to do this as a rezone. And either the city could initiate the rezone as part of some map housekeeping, or it can be a rezone application.
This is zone commercial though too, isn't it? County land?
Yes, it is.
What
This is
do we
commercial
do?
mixed use.
Why don't we do both of these parcels since we're likely to buy this?
I don't think, we could, yeah. I don't think ultimately it's going to matter a whole lot whether it's,
To the value.
yeah.
Okay.
Is it buildable at all?
The frontage probably is.
We only need
Well-
this right here, and we're going to need storm retention facility is what we're going to need. That's
And it lessens the appearance of a spot zone as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That'll be rezoned to public facilities then anyway, won't it?
could be.
But we may have a remnant that we want to sell
Yeah,
for
we might
redevelopment.
sell that piece because this is probably dry over here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this could get chopped off.
So anyway, so this is the first of what could be a series of citywide map amendments. The problem here is they came in to meet with us about doing just a rezone where they fill out the application and it's like a $3,500 application process because they got to pay a hearing examiner, they got to do SEPA, they got to do public notice signs. It's probably a 7-page decision, but it's a whole lot of paperwork and time to do something that's pretty simple. So from that standpoint, I would be supportive of including this as part of a citywide map revision.
Except I think they're on a time frame to close.
They are.
And I think they're going to resubmit this week on a zoning, just a straight zoning application. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going to go through the application process.
I think they will go through the application process unless there's an alternative that we can take to planning commission and, presumably a public
We're going to have
hearing.
this done by the end of the year, though.
We could, yeah, and a hearing examiner is going to be on the same timeline because you have to advertise it, get the hearing scheduled, so we could probably save this person $4,000 and $3,500 and take care of it. The second one,
Any objections?
the second one of these, this has been an issue for years out on Meline. I don't know how you
I don't
pronounce
even
this
know
street. I
where
heard
it
it
is.
behind the Lowe's.
Oh.
So this is one where if I turn on the
And
city,
you get to it from way over there.
yeah, when you turn on the
I do
city,
remember that now.
where's the?
There's no access from Sedgwick.
Isn't that how they access it?
No, there's no act. It comes all the way through the county. So you have to come in on Dogwood Road, which is
Yeah.
rural county, and then it comes into the city up here. But this is zoned commercial. So you have commercial properties accessed through a rural residential area, which the city in 2014, we thought we were doing everybody a favor by proposing to change this in the comp plan to single family. And everybody came out and said, no, we don't want single family, we want this to stay commercial. We've since had several people come in and try to do something on their property, and because of the road, the condition of the road, and the inability to do commercial development, they all say, well, it'd be better if we could put some houses out here. And so it seems like there's at least a majority out there now that would like to see this area go in a different direction.
Mixed use.
Well, we were proposing the neighborhood mixed use, which allows single family or commercial uses. It's, the neighborhood mixed use is really designed to be more of a walkable, pedestrian friendly area, which this is certainly not. But the zone does provide them the flexibility that they need to be able to make use of their property.
Well, so in terms of centers planning, what would it look like if they were to somehow get some walkable access along Albertsons there?
There's a Blackjack Creek flows through here, so you're crossing Blackjack.
Right.
Let me turn on the.
It should be a car dealer.
What?
It should be a car dealer. We should move Titus there. Or...
Yeah, if it had access, maybe. But if you turn on critical areas, so you've got streams coming right through the middle of this. This whole
Big
area.
wetland there in the middle.
Yeah.
They can do bridge.
Yeah, this is high seismic hazard area. You got potential wetlands, you've got actual wetlands, you've got floodplain, you've got...
So there are houses there now.
Yeah, there's, let me put it back on the aerial photo.
Not a good investment.
No.
Yeah, it's all houses out here with... I think this is the one that maybe...
No, that's the one.
Yeah, I think they, maybe, did somebody die and they wanted to give a lot to
It's-
each kid, or...
It's his widow.
Yeah, so they were talking about giving a piece to each of their kids so they could build houses out there, and they can't do that.
And
as it
lock from
exists now.
Lowe's.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that going to neighborhood mixed use would solve a lot of problems without making it impossible for people who see the value of being commercial to be lost. But there's no good solution out here based on where the city boundary is and the condition of
And the
roads.
roads, yeah, the roads.
Yeah. And then finally, the JWJ property. This is one where we. Let me find it here.
I couldn't tell what the surrounding zoning was on
Well, it abuts the county. So if you turn on the, so the veterans home is here. All of these houses are in the county. Everything on the east side of Arnold is county. And so this is a city property that abuts and accesses through the county. It's a big ravine, but it has a little bit of a developable area at the top of the hill, and they've been wanting to do something more along the lines of apartments.
Is this John Johnson?
Yeah. And John Johnson, I believe, picked this up off of somebody who bought it and realized they weren't going to be able to do anything with it, and they needed to sell it in a pinch, and so John's trying to find some viable use of the property, but it's expensive to develop because of the terrain and...
They want to put apartments.
Where's the
there?
city? Where's it touch the city? Why is
Houses contiguous
It
to
It
the
just
city.
sticks out in the city. It is the thumb sticking out.
So south of that is
Oh,
the
where's
city.
the thumb? Okay.
Yeah, everything in Canada.
Oh wow! Talk about illogical boundaries.
It's got a boundary line adjustment problem too.
Yeah, the boundary somehow of this property is partially county, partially city, and it sounds like a boundary line adjustment was recorded at some point without any approvals from anyone, and really screwed
So
things
access
up.
is
So,
from.
but they could annex that
Access is
sliver
from
in
Fourth. Let me go on.
because it's in the UGA.
Be nice if it was access off of only.
Yeah, so the access here goes down behind.
Oh yeah.
They'd have to improve this, which is a county road, but you can see the for sale sign down here. This is the area. They think they can get about 20 or so apartments that would be 2-story that kind of overlook the ravine. And
with the rezone.
with the rezone, yeah. But they can't do apartments under the current zoning, and I don't think extending any facilities down there for sewer or water is viable without enough units to pay for it. And I'll say that, just in terms of acreage, this property, notwithstanding the property line issues, it's 4.5 acres. If you were to do single family, you might get 4 houses there. If you do if you look at the benefit to the city of getting 20 apartments compared to 4 houses, I think the connection fees, the property tax, everything else that gets added on, this is a better use of some pretty difficult to use land. The argument against, I guess, would be that these are rural roads. They're not close to anything, so putting apartments in the middle of a residential or natural area is only going to mean that all those people are driving a greater distance to get where they're going. And there's no sidewalks on Retzel coming through the area, so it's... And the final thing is, this was zoned R12 under the old code. It went from R12 to R2, and that was a conscious decision because this was seen as being highly encumbered by critical areas, and most other things that were R12 went to R3. So this thing was effectively downzoned.
Twice over.
Even though R2 still allows more units than R12 did, it wasn't treated the same as other R12 properties. So I guess the question is, would the city want to sponsor this as kind of fixing something that we said that things that were R12 would go to R3? In this case, it didn't happen on this location.
I hear Crickets.
I'll turn on the topo for you so you can see. Yeah, it's
Wow.
so they basically wanted to do parking along this uphill side with the buildings at the top of the hill, and
What's on the right side? Are those vacant lots?
these, yeah. If you're on Olney, I think those.
It's the park.
Yeah, it's the other side.
Back side of the park.
Oh, there are houses there. But it drops off pretty good there in the woods.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty steep. I don't like the idea of apartments there, just because of the location. And the access. The access is just...
I don't know. What do you think, Sean?
It seems awkward.
Yeah, that's a good description.
I mean, in this case, they could do the quasi-judicial process and apply for the rezone. That way there would be the public hearing, and you could let the hearing examiner make the recommendation, and if there's people who
Require certain improvements as associated
You don't
with it.
typically do conditional rezones. You
Can't.
either approve it or you
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
But at least the neighbors would have, a more facilitated type public hearing to discuss the pros and cons of doing this. And if there's no opposition to it, then the hearing examiner can make that recommendation.
Okay.
It probably makes no sense.
Yeah.
I guess let it go to the planning commission though.
Well, we can get their input. Yeah, we just took this here today before the planning commission because of scheduling, but ideally we would hear from the planning commission first.
Okay.
So do you want to hear back from them before you decide? Do you want to proceed with the other two? Is area-wide type amendments? I mean,
I think we should probably let them chime in.
Doesn't hurt to let them chime in, I guess.
so if the planning commission suggests that we go forward with either 2 or 3 of these, then bring it forward.
Right.
Okay.
For Moline, we kind of said you need to have everybody on board because at least 2 of the people out here still don't want to be rezoned, and they're going to fight it.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
a grumpy old man at the end of the street who has 2 parcels and he doesn't want to be rezoned.
He likes his commercial taxes.
Yes, and so there's one lady who's supposed to be going around to every neighbor and getting them to sign on to the rezone application. So,
It could go nowhere too.
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll let you know what happens.
Okay.
I suppose if planning commission votes for this, we'd probably bring it to work study in 2 weeks, so that the full council can discuss it.
Okay. Going back to the first one, I think maybe it does make sense,
To include the county.
yeah, to include mixed use on that parcel as well. It also is an awkward fit.
Just do one parcel.
Right.
Do the whole box.
Do the whole box.
Yep.
All right.
With a little strip.
Okay.
Spot zoning.
Traffic impact fee.
All right. So I wanted to let council know that the traffic impact fee study, we've kicked that off. You'll be seeing, as part of the comp plan amendments, we brought you the 6-year street plan, or the 2-tier tip. We haven't proposed any changes to that other than shifting the dates and filling in the correct dollar amounts for Tremont, which we now know. We're putting $23 million down as we've rounded to $23 million based on the receipts that we have to date. And so they're going to proceed with that, but what I was talking to them about with all this downtown redevelopment and the fact that downtown is transit-oriented in nature, does it make sense that we charge the same impact fee for development downtown that we do for development away from downtown where you're more likely to generate additional traffic? We're already reducing parking. We have lower parking standards in our downtown compared to elsewhere in the city, and so does it make sense to have a traffic impact fee reduction? And in talking to our consultant, they actually said the newest ITE manual, which is the trip generation manual that's put out, actually has new assumptions for development in areas that's served by high capacity transit. And so we have the ability to do one of 2 things. We can either use different trip generation numbers for projects downtown where they can make adjustments based on the fact that they have transit access to work, and potentially instead of 1 peak PM trip for residential development, it's like 0.4. The other thing that we could do is consider taking our downtown center and creating a sub-district within our citywide fee, and have just a separate fee for trips created in downtown to help encourage things to happen downtown. And so as we start down that road, I just wanted to get some initial feedback from the land use committee and see if you're interested in pursuing one or both of those options.
The former is a project-by-project approach versus the latter, which is more of a district approach.
Yeah, I think the latter is easier to administer because it's much more technical when you're doing reports for a specific project and then making adjustments to trip generation based on conditions. I think it's more costly for both the applicants to do that analysis and for us to review that analysis. If you were to just define an area and say that if it's within this proximity, which could be just downtown, I mean it could be not even up on top of the hill, but just in the waterfront areas or within a certain proximity of transit, you could have that area of the city not paying into certain projects where they're not going to be benefited, like maybe Sydney Road, southwest the Sydney Sedgwick area. Does it make sense for somebody who's building a house or creating a job downtown to be paying for that project if it doesn't actually get people to and from their place of employment or their residence?
Let me ask kind of a crazy question, make sure I'm not off base on this, but especially with what this 976 may look like tomorrow, we just don't have a lot of funding opportunities.
Right.
And as it sits today, if you were living downtown, you are taking trips to get to grocery stores. You are getting, so when we look at Bethel and Sydney, and I feel like we may need those dollars to make the necessary improvements.
Yeah, you may, and I don't know whether
Cut off our revenue stream.
But there aren't that many projects downtown.
I don't know that we want to cut it off, but I think we want to look at. I mean, you can look at Ali Kashi's project, and he's going to be at 1.2 to 1, roughly on his parking. Where a house in McCormick Woods, you're planning for 2.5 cars, aren't you?
perhaps, and really, when you do the fee, you're not reducing the total amount of revenue to the city. But you're shifting who's paying for it. So if you're in a downtown area, you pay less, but if you're in an outlying, it actually increases your fee because that money still has to be made up somewhere. And so does it make sense to charge more money where people are going to be driving a further distance or through more expensive projects?
I don't know that it should be a broad area, but if you truly are you're truly having fewer cars and you're walking to that ferry terminal, this isn't something that's a mile out off the waterfront, but I don't know what that radius is.
Yeah.
But
and if we get a grocery store downtown, I think that changes things greatly compared to
like I said, it's just where it sits today.
Yeah.
It could absolutely change.
Yeah. So those are the options, and I think that I guess looking at a project by project basis and trying to do that as part of the TIA maybe makes more sense in the short term. But I think in the long term, if we are able to attract a grocery store to our downtown in an area where people could reasonably be expected to walk to it, or even if it's within driving distance, but it's not on roads that require significant improvements because they have adequate capacity, then do we look at creating that separate district to help?
I think it's premature to look at that because even still, it's like, it's January, it's dark, it's 34 degrees, it's pouring rain. Are people really walking to the grocery store?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the concept.
Yeah.
I do. I think we may not be ready for it yet, but I think it's a good thing to think about because it is one way also to just accentuate the difference.
Because you need to incent that behavior.
Yes.
Sure. And if we don't incent that behavior, then we won't get the grocery store and we won't get the walk. I think that's what we're trying to create, is this walkable community that you don't have a car or you use your car a lot less.
And that's the other thing is if we do get a grocery store downtown, they're going to have to pay a traffic impact fee. So that's a deterrent to the grocery store coming in. And the people who might, if we got a grocery store downtown and if it was something different from what we have in other areas of the city where people from McCormick would drive downtown to go to this particular store, they're still paying an impact fee, but the grocery store isn't, and it's supporting that local downtown
Right.
community.
So I could see that happening. If you opened up a Harbor Greens or a Central Market style, you would have people driving down there specifically for that.
Likewise, we're going to be paying impact fees on our community center because it's downtown, and if you created an area that had a lower impact, that's less money that we're paying from our general fund or from grant sources or other sources into the traffic impact fee account to then fund projects elsewhere. So, and the same could be said for the courthouse if we wanted to, if it extended up the hill, which I don't know that that's necessary, especially considering how many people
Drive
are
through.
coming through our city to get to that facility.
that one's
I don't know
not-
that we want to exempt them.
And I don't know that we want to exempt downtown. It's, do we want to have a different factor
Different rate. Okay.
Right.
that we're using because structured parking is so dang expensive. We're going to have likely, or logically, for this major development to happen, it's going to have fewer cars involved in it.
Is it something we want to kind of keep ahead of in terms of where we are with programming the uses downtown eventually?
Well, I think the other thing we could do is we could look at this as part of the sub-area plan for downtown. But if we choose to do it, we're updating the fee right now. If we choose to do it later, we're going to have to update that fee again to do the calculation and show our work in order to charge those fees. So this is sort of the window where we either do it now or we do it 3 years from now. And in 3 years, some of these projects might be coming in for applications where they have to go ahead and pay this fee because we haven't acted yet. So this is just a moment in time when we could choose to go down this path, or we could defer it for 3 years, but anything that happens between now and 3 years is just not going to get to take advantage of it.
Do you have an idea of what type of savings this could represent?
You're the
I
council.
think, yeah,
Well, no, but kind of what's going through your mind right now? If it's X, I mean, what is this a $100,000 savings to the Cheers project? Is it a $10,000 savings? Is it a,
let me do some quick math.
I mean, we're probably talking.
And the Cheers is far enough to the side of downtown. I mean that's like kind of where I would imagine the border of being, whether something is in or out, and that project's happening with it.
Right.
So I would probably not
correct?
not cut it
But
there.
it just
But
it
anything-
happens to be happening.
Anything inside of Cheers and maybe to West Bay, the Cheers project is 42 units, if I
39.
39 units. So 39 times 25, 52. So that's $100,000 in impact fees. I would imagine you could get that to 40. So about $60,000 on a project like that. But for the bank, I think their fees as an employer.
We shouldn't call it the bank because it's Sound West's project. Bank is the tenant, and they're not. The bank doesn't have anything to do with the residential component of this,
Gotcha.
and that's what's going to drive the impact fees. Well, also
I just
bank
wanna
has-
make
The
sure
bank
that
still
we
own the
have
land to Sound West?
they only own some of the land.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So Sound West will own all the land.
Just need to find that balance point between.
Yeah.
I think it
there's
could
a
be-
balance between helping them and also making sure we protect revenue.
It could be
for the
half- it could cut
massive
the fee in
road
half.
improvements that we need in this city.
So are you looking at if an application comes in and it trips this threshold, then it would get that reduction?
I don't know that it's an application by application basis. We either choose to create a downtown district that has a separate fee, or on a case by case basis, they can show their work to justify the reduction using this methodology, but they have to spend money to get that reduction.
Right.
And how much they spend relative to what the reduction is, it may not even be worth.
Well, so what about in this scenario, albeit perhaps unlikely, that a development comes in but is providing 2 vehicles parking?
It really
Per
doesn't
unit.
have as much to do with parking as it does with trip generation for the use.
Right, but so you're talking at Cheers, they're looking at maybe 1 vehicle per unit, but if somebody provides 2, then they're anticipating more use.
You're right, but that isn't how it's analyzed.
Yeah, I don't think some people may just want to own an extra car even though they don't use it.
That's true. Sure.
I think that it really has to do with are they actually taking more trips or not when they live downtown, and I think I think in the near term, they probably are going to be taking close to as many trips because there aren't services available downtown. But I think in the long term, they're going to actually generate less trips over time as downtown changes. And so do they deserve to pay so much on the front end when it's already hard to develop downtown?
Are we required to look at this every 3 years? Is that
That's the recommended sort of best management practice. We're already
Okay.
at 4 years on this cycle because we've kind of...
Counties never touch theirs.
But theirs is low
So far
enough
as
that
that
nobody
way.
would appeal. So,
Nick's right. We should be looking at it in 3 years, but things get in the way.
yeah, especially in 3 years?
So it's I think this is that moment in time. If we,
I think we should look at it.
Work study?
well, I think
Well,
he's engaged with the consultant.
Yeah, we need
we're
some
looking
direct-
for some
yeah.
direction.
Yeah, give some
yeah.
direction first.
I mean, we can take the discussion to work study. I think you're going to vote on the comp plan amendments next week, which finalizes our updated tip that shifts the projects out. That's the information that this consultant needs to put together a draft study and begin the process. But I think from a organizational standpoint, they have to start thinking about these projects in terms of, are they benefiting the whole city, or is there a sub area within the city that we're looking at separately? And we don't want to pay them to do that work twice. So if we want to take this to a whole work study, we certainly can.
I'd like to have a little more information from the consultant just to help inform that discussion, whereas right now it seems so broad and ambiguous.
At work study or
But yeah,
Or back
before
again.
work study, just to
Okay.
hear from the consultant to kind of narrow the scope of this conversation a little bit.
so back to land use with more information.
Okay. I'll once we have the tip done, let me talk to the consultant and see if they would like to come
It's
talk
a
to
bit
you.
dangerous too. Let's not talk about this in project specific, but
So
the sub area. We're looking. The grocery store is likely not to happen downtown. It's probably in the wings here.
Right.
okay. Parks plan. Last time.
Well, and we just wanted to let you know we kicked off. We've selected a consultant, correct?
Yep.
We're in negotiations with them on the scope. We're likely going to add to that scope because of we want the community center to be part of that discussion with the consultant, with community outreach about this and what our community wants to see in a community center, and then taking that a step farther, we likely need a revenue source, and if you want these things in this community center, are you willing to tax yourself to pay for it? So, and we need some indication from our community before we put something on a ballot and travel very far on a process to know if there's
2020.
support in our community to do something of this
Right.
magnitude. Taking that another step farther, I talked to Commissioner Gilder this morning. That went better than my conversation with Commissioner Garrido last week. We talked about the idea of, I did anyway, when Nick was at the meeting.
That's what I wanted.
If this benefits more than just the city, potentially the UGA, do we want to take that conversation farther? If we did impose a tax and it was only citywide, now we've got these areas we're looking to annex, and there's another deterrent to annexation because, well, I don't want to annex into the city. It's, they've got these taxes. They're likely benefiting from these facilities that we're going to, these parks and facilities we're going to create. So is there desire, if we go forward with the Parks and Recs district, to include an area bigger than just the city?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do too. It didn't go very far
With Charlotte.
with Charlotte.
Well, depending on the amenity, could there be an in-city rate and an out-of-city rate?
That happens at Kingston, at the Village Greens. If you are
But they're not a city. They're a UGA,
but
a Lambert, or
they have a Parks and Recs district.
Area, okay.
And if
or
you're
in it. It's a certain rate.
Sean's daughter wants to get married and he lives in the city and he wants to lease that facility, he gets this rate. And your niece who lives in Eastern Washington wants to do it over here, she doesn't live in the city.
Yeah.
She has a different rate. So that, yes, that exists.
Okay.
That model exists in Kingston. That's definitely a possibility. But I just wanted to share some of those thoughts about the parks plan and what your guys' thoughts are. Do you support that idea of a broader scope?
I think to begin with,
Broader scope also costs more money.
how much more?
Well, our budget's at $35,000 right now, which is what we budgeted for the project, and
Right.
this is pretty lean. I don't think they're doing revisions right now based on us asking them to do the outreach on the community center. I wanted them to clearly define that they were doing a parks impact fee calculation in this. They claimed it was already in here, but it wasn't explicit. So we've also asked them to help us coordinate our downtown plan and our Sydney Sedgwick sub-area plan to make sure that we're doing targeted outreach for those folks to find out about parks needs related to those areas. I think they're going to add a few $1,000s to this, but it's probably 40, 45 tops. So I think we're pretty
Well, and
close.
if you look at the entire parks plan, we have a regional park, right, where people are coming in from outside.
I was for a larger TBD, but that didn't get anywhere either.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know that even if we include it, I just don't see us getting any financial support from the county. So we're going to need to add some dollars to this.
So anyway,
Once we figure out what it is.
so he said he'd have a revised scope to us by the end of the week. We will then get it to the first available council agenda for approval.
Probably the 26th
Yeah, probably the 26th.
or
Okay.
2 weeks later.
They are planning a retreat with the City Council and Planning Commission to talk about parks as part of the kickoff process for this. So there are some direct outreach that'll come to the City Council, and then they're going to do they're actually going to do a mailing type survey where they actually mail all the residents within the area and solicit feedback directly, which will include that. And then I think there's a way to do it by area to gauge support for certain things in certain areas, and it'll be very targeted.
Yeah, I mean, we could go through an outreach process and determine the people in this area don't want anything to do with it, so we create a boundary of people that want this. Or a district. And maybe it's just the city, but we won't know the answer to the question if we don't ask the question.
Yep. Well, that makes sense.
Okay.
Anything else? We're still working on multifamily tax exemption, but it's sort of it's gotten sidetracked. But all of a sudden, Carrie and I are writing 6 plans at the same time, and it's
Job security. And everybody, Sophie's on board from Triangle for the retreat on 17th.
17th of what?
January.
Is that confirmed? 7th, the date's confirmed?
Friday.
Well, nobody got back to me and said that didn't work.
Understand.
So,
Yeah.
Did you send his a calendar invite gone out for all of us? Yeah.
you guys do the calendar invites.
I figured Janine would.
Friday, January 17th,
What's the start time?
6
That's
a.m.
negotiable.
6 a.m.
No, well, like 9 o'clock or something.
So 9 to
3,
9
4.
to 3.
Yeah.
6 a.m.
Council
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm fuzzy on time, but
planning, council retreat. Okay, it's on the calendar.
just an all-day thing.
Yep.
Make this.
Good.
All right.
Adjourn.
Adjourned.